wary of positions where you're taking risks, because it's generally going to favor the side who has the advantages in the position, and that's what we're going to see here. Now, notice it's a little bit difficult for black, because now he can't play bishop f5 immediately, because I can simply take, and because the d4 bishop is hanging, black has a problem. So my opponent plays a very ambitious move in the style of how he's been playing. Knight e8, which of course I didn't see coming at all. The idea, though, is he's going to fianchetto the knight, and when he does so, then he will have control of this f5 square and be able to do things like bishop f5. And of course, he's taking some time out to do this, so this is very dangerous for him. And here already I began to feel that I should be looking for the knockout blow. And not really understanding my opponent's piece of, state of mind, I calculate forever on rook a e1 how I would respond to bishop f6, which of course is a passive move, but probably black's best. And I spent a long time with variations like f5, where it's clear that white is doing very well. Clear advantage. But, I felt here that I should already be looking for the knockout blow. And so I did play rook a e1. Now notice, all of my pieces are really in this, except really the knight on c3. He's essentially been spurned by the bishop on d4, who says that he's not as good, that the knight isn't as good as him. And he's kind of teasing the knight. So when we look at all of white's pieces, they're all very well placed except the knight. So already here, white should be dreaming of somehow bringing that knight into the game. Now, it's not just that the knight's angry, but it's also a kind of interesting question of harmony here, because we see all of the white pieces really doing something except the knight. So if the knight can somehow get into the game, then all of the potential of the other pieces will be greatly enhanced. And we'll see in this game that the knight actually ends up giving himself up to open up the other pieces. So instead of bishop f6, black plays f6, bishop h6, and now he fianchettos the knight as planned. So here I really, again, took another thought. And one thing I felt I did well in this game was to recognize what's often called the key moments. So what I mean by that is when you feel like there is a moment in the game where it's time, in particular, to put your opponent away, that's the time to spend like 20 or 30 minutes on the clock. And that's something I've gotten better at with age. And so I came up with a very simple idea here, f5. Now, what's the point? Well, for one, it's probably best here for black to say to himself, all right, now it's time to bail out into the passive position and play. Takes. And now here white has a very nice choice between rook e6 or queen d3. And white's going to have a very enduring advantage because the king is going to be much weaker, of course, than white's king, and we have the weakness on e7, and of course white's rooks are already better mobilized. So that was what I considered to be the main option, but I had to consider g5. And this is a little frightening, well, not necessarily frightening, but worrisome, because if black now plays bishop e5, he will be able to greatly consolidate his position. So I needed to have a move here after g5. Also, there's, nettlesome questions of maybe queen e8 and queen h5 that I have to think about. Now, it's not that I feel that black's better if he somehow gets bishop e5 in, but in order to play f5, I really have to make sure I can do something. Because not only is bishop e5 now an option, but I've really locked in my bishop here, which would like to be doing things. And of course, I don't really want to trade this guy off unless I'm getting something concretely for it. So here's where that knight became very angry. Knight e4. Now, this move does a couple things. three things. Now, the first thing it does is it's saying to the bishop on d4, you can no longer take me. So the bishop no longer has an out. And the only way the bishop can save itself now is by moving at some point to get out of being loose on the d4 square. The second thing it does is we're going to be threatening to trap the bishop on g4 with a plan like knight g3, touching h5, and h3. But the most important thing is now we're really threatening knight takes g5. And when the queen comes to g5, not only will the fianchettoed knight on g7 be pinned, but the bishop on g4 will be trapped. So all of a sudden the knight does three things in one move. It hadn't really been doing much the whole game, and now by activating himself in this way, black is completely lost, as we'll see. Now, there's not much that black can do here. I give some variations, but basically if, say, rook f7, knight g5 might even be good, but knight g3 I think is even better, where we're going to be trapping stuff. Notice we're threatening things like rook e4 as well. And if bishop e5, we can take on e5 and play h3. So black accepts the challenge and plays bishop f5. Okay, bishop g7. Now, of course, it's not the greatest trade, but we have some concrete ideas in taking the fianchettoed knight on g7. First point is he can't get out of this because of bishop e4. And notice, this all has to do with the piece hanging on d4 originally. So, king g7, now the idea, knight g5. So the knight really has to get taken. If bishop d3, knight e6 is completely crushing. So black takes the knight, queen g5. Now if king h8, then it's kind of simple because bishop f5 is going to come and rook e7 next. So black plays bishop g6, and now I have rook e7. And one of the main variations I saw here is if king h8, I have takes, rook d7, bishop d3, and when I saw this move, I knew I didn't have to worry because, of course, when the rooks come off, the bishops will essentially lose all their potency. So my opponent tried, after rook e7, he tried to take, king g8, queen e6. Now, on h8, king h8, I can take and play queen d6. That was my intention. And the rook, notice it's not actually doing anything. Rook f2, and it's not really threatening anything yet. So when my opponent played king g7, I first did a professional thing. I played queen e7, repeating the position. My friends at the GM house here in the East Bay make a big deal about repeating. To me, it doesn't seem like such a big thing, but I do it for them. And here I just played the simple rook f8, rook f8, queen g4. Oh, excuse me. I didn't take. I played just queen g4 directly. And here it's clear that white's going to win the game. It might be a little bit dangerous for white if black were somehow able to keep both bishops on the board, because there might be some back rank stuff. But here with queen g4, I'm assured really of trading one of those guys off. Black played bishop e5. There's not much to do. Rook f3. This way, there's no back rank threats ever. And I'm threatening things like queen d7, and that's in fact what happened after here, queen d7. Now if king h6, this is going to be some kind of mate. So after queen d7, we saw king g8, bishop g6, pawn takes, queen takes d6. So I felt this was a nice game and really illustrated the theme that we've talked about here in Chess Lecture a bit, which is both a theme which helps one's practical play, but also is an aesthetic theme where really the piece that wasn't working, if it can be turned into a piece that works, in particular if your opponent was banking on that piece essentially not playing, its sudden participation will be especially devastating, more than any other kind of devastation that you might do with your active pieces. And that's why we've often called it here the angry piece. So this is GM Jesse Kraai, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.